and straight I will repair to the curragh of Kildare. For it's there I'll find tidings of my dear.
Hello and welcome to Lilies Livin, episode 9. Our first episode that we have where we're not going to have any championship game to look forward to. Kev, are we Lilies Livin or Lilies Dead at the moment?
I think this stage we're starting to slow descent to wrapping up season 1. From my side, I was hoping at the start of it to at least see July, because we all know lilies bloom in July. Well, I don't know if they actually that sounded the right thing to say. Anyway, slow descent begins. We're not finished just yet in terms of Lilies Livin, but I don't know. I suppose when we started back in April, Brian, it is mid-June a bit premature? Like, did we think we had a bit longer left in us?
Oh, sure. But if you listen back to our first couple of episodes, I was the most bullish man in the land. Like I was there charting out, that we they lose to them. We're gonna, I had the charts up on the wall behind me here. I was very very confident of a latter run, at least a quarter-final, if not a semi-final appearance. And even before the qualifier draw, I said if we avoid Mayo, I was still mapping out the route to the semi-final, because we would have, had we not got Mayo and had we not got Kerry, we would have avoided the Dubs again in the semi-final. So, yeah, look, it's disappointing. As soon as we got Mayo, I thought, right, that could be us. Just the way that we played in Croker this season, not only against Dublin, but against Westmeath as well. I didn't think we played our best. The way Mayo bet us in the last game with the league campaign as well. I just thought that it might be a step too far, but they were there for the take, and really Mayo in the end. We were 3 points up at half time. We were 6 points up probably midway through the second half, and just sort of shot the togs a bit, really, didn't we? It was I couldn't believe it. Like, even though like the momentum started to get with Mayo after they sort of kicked a couple of 2 or 3 points and they got it to within 3, and then they obviously scored the goal. But even after the goal, we were still 2 points up, and we still had chances. We still had chances. Dan Flynn had a free kick which went well wide, and we were just taking the shots, really, that in the first half we were taking, sort of, working the ball in, keeping the ball in the hands, and working the opportunities. Whereas as soon as Mayo started getting on top and turning the screw, and the crowd as well for Mayo was immense, I have to say. Their travelling support was much better than ours. But yeah, I just felt that we really didn't cope with the momentum switch and the changes. Mayo started ringing the changes a bit quicker than we did as well. I don't think that helped. Just very, very disappointing, I suppose. But just because they were there for the taking.
Yeah, look, it would have been absolutely huge had we gone on and beat Mayo on Saturday night. It would have been one of the first times a Kildare team had won in Croke Park against the top 2 or 3 or 4 potentially county in the country. And as you said, Brian, they were absolutely there for the taking. I didn't go up to the game, as you know, and you obviously were representing Lilies Livin up there. And I was thinking, when we were 6 points up, and Dan Flynn was jilking in and out, and he was absolutely turning the boys asunder. I was like, what am I after missing here? Honestly, I was like, I'm going to jump at the current. I don't care. Such a range of emotions to go through. And then I suppose the minute when Oisin Mullen's goal went in, you felt the walls closing in, and I don't know. Look, I don't know if it's a case of game management that we need to learn to close the games out better. Like, I don't know why we were rushing for scores when we were already 2 or 3 points up towards the end. I just don't know why we were doing that. Like, we didn't need to get a couple of more extra scores at that point. We need to take this thing out of the game, and didn't need to rush things. And I just, a couple of decisions. Look, it's very easy for us to say, like, obviously the boys were in the heat of battle at the time, and there were probably, an element of exhaustion creeping in as well. But yeah, I have to say, like, proud of them, proud of the performance, proud of the comeback after the Dublin loss, but still fairly disappointed, I have to say, on reflection. And it has to go down as one we left behind us,
Definitely, yeah. I was on a jolly up with 3 the lads, Hammer, Dave, and Bruno, and we got in, and we got at half time. We were 3 points up, couldn't believe it. And I was just saying to the lads, we were in the front seat of the Hogan stand, and we went up for a pint at half time. and we were giddy, you know, we were happy out that, you know, geez, we could do something there. But I was just reminding the lads, I was like, let's wait now and just hold it back a touch, because give it 40 minutes time or 45 minutes time when we're walking up the steps of all the way up to the top of the stand again, it you know, from the games gone past or the years gone past, we know it's a different experience at full time than at half time. But then we actually missed the first 60 seconds in the second half, so we had dinner 3 points up, and when we went down to our seats for the second half, we'd missed the score. We were 4 points up, and we were 5 points up, and then we were 6 points up, and then even I was getting giddy. I was getting carried away, and we were shouting and roaring them on. But I have to say how shocked I was with the crowd. Like, it felt like, now we were down the very front row, so we couldn't really see the crowd like anyone else. Like, we couldn't see, even looking across into the Cusack, there wasn't much white jerseys dotted around the place. But I really didn't notice the sort of difference in the numbers in the crowd until Mayo, they scored that goal, and then they really got behind them, and you could hear how loud they were compared to even when we did chip away and get 1 or 2 scores. Just the noise was completely different. I'd say the Mayo crowd outnumbered us by 3, if not 4 to 1. So I have to say hats off to the Mayo crowd. I know there was talks in the lead up to the game about how the hill should have been open to allow you know, a cheaper ticket or concessions, because, you know, it's €35 for a double header. It's quite expensive, even if, you know, most sets of supporters on all 4 teams are only going to watch the one game. But I think the way they sort of compacted it, they didn't have the canal end open as well. The atmosphere wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be an absolute graveyard, but it was actually good. And that's, in truth, down to the Mayo following. But that was probably, leaving the game, that was probably one of the most disappointing things that I felt, was just how our support wasn't there. But I can definitely empathise as well with a lot of Kildare supporters, because I know how much they've spent going up to Croke Park year in, year out over the past decade or so, and just how often you leave just in, you know, the desperation after our devastation after the result. So it is an expensive trip out, and especially when you're playing there 3-4 times a year in your Leinster semi-final, your Leinster final, then you're either final round of qualifiers or a quarter final. Like, it can get expensive. But it was a bit disappointing. I would have liked if there was a bigger crowd, and who knows, we could have felt like we were lost at sea then when Mayo were coming back and the crowd just got completely behind them. So it was tough from that regard. But Mayo weren't great at all, especially that first half. I think it was definitely one that, you know, we had a chance and one that got away from us. And it's weird with Kildare. Like, you're nearly more devastated losing, like, 5 points flattered Mayo in the end with that goal right at the end. It was, you know, the game was a lot tighter than that. But you're nearly more devastated losing to Mayo in a very close game than you are getting annihilated by the Dubs by 20 points. It's harder to take the sort of the one against Mayo where, you know, just got away from us a bit. But it's just same stuff, different year, isn't it? I know. Yeah, I know we laughed about it earlier on in the season when your man, who was it, Dub Hill 16 Spy, had his little rap in.
Don't be bringing him up now.
I tell you what, he's on the money again.
Yeah, he's painfully accurate.
Painfully accurate. But look, it's annoying now that it's obviously we're finished. I think this is the earliest. I think I read earlier on Twitter. This is the earliest that Kildare have finished championship campaign since 1995, I think. And it's just such a long way until the league campaign next year. So we have to wait now the guts of 6 or 7 months until we're back sort of playing Ulster Cup and league football.
Yeah, so over half a year anyway, which, you know, like, obviously it's, I think in that time, you know, people will be quite disillusioned with the way things wrapped up, you know, given the expectations after the league, and then also in that time I think people will get back on the horse again and will be absolutely mad about Kildare football come January next year. I know that's certainly, I'll find myself in that camp anyway. And sure, look, maybe we'll start the year with a bit of silverware and an O'Byrne Cup win, and see a lot of these under-20s lads coming through to the senior panel as well, which is definitely, you know, a positive. But just to touch on what you were saying, Brian, about the atmosphere, like, unfortunately, as I said, I couldn't make it up on Saturday, but I think the irony is you probably would have got more Kildare fans in a ground that was a quarter the size of Croke Park, or even less. You know, like, I have no idea stats, no idea numbers. This is just from my own, the kind of 2 cents on the matter. Croke Park was 80,000 people, and probably there was less than 15,000, 10,000 Kildare fans. like if we were somewhere down the country, would you have got more than that, or even maybe not in the stadium, but going down to take over the town? And like, it's one of the best things about the qualifiers, like taking over kind of a Midlands town in Ireland, and the colour and the fanfare and the pubs are packed, and it's serious tangible energy. And as I said, even if you're not going to the game, you're there for the occasion. So that's just something I think the GA will have to look at. But I don't know if anyone's listened to this podcast and taken feedback and tips and pointers on how to improve the game for next year. Hopefully they are, but it's certainly something that I would definitely want to see, Kildare play more outside of Croke Park in the championship next year.
Yeah, it sounded like a broken record the way we've been saying it. And a lot of people have been saying it on Twitter throughout this campaign as well. But just looking at the draw for the quarterfinals, and all 4 of those will be in Croke Park. So even though I thought maybe having Cork Dublin down in Parky Rin, or is that the new Cork Stadium, Parky Rin, or is it still Parky Keeve?
Or Parky Keeve is probably where they would have had it.
Sorry, Parky Keeve, and that new Parky Keeve, yeah, that would have been an incredible game. If you had, imagine you had Kerry, Mayo, Cork, Dublin, all down there. But no, they're going to leave the Dubs in Croke Park, obviously. Maybe next year, yeah, hopefully. But I think I don't know the exact reasons, but my suspicions are that it's to do with like corporate boxes and sort of season tickets and stuff, and that you need X amount of games there. But it's no use for us, I'm afraid. I'm sure we'll talk about the game with our guest now, so we'll introduce him. He's been always a fan's favourite in the lily white jersey. He's a player who gave everything for Kildare during his time for senior footballers. It is Nurney man, Mikey
Lovely
Conway.
Backdrop as Conway slots that over the bar.
Mikey, thanks a million for joining us here. We can't start anywhere but sort of reviewing the defeat on Saturday evening against Mayo. You were watching the game yourself. Before the game, I went up to it. Glenn Ryan, we were looking at Twitter on our way up, looking for the announcement, the team announcement, which usually we have the day before. We never got it. I don't know if Glenn Ryan was if there was any mind games going on behind the scenes about sort of, changing up the team. He did make a lot of changes. I think we definitely set up more defensively than we had in the Leinster final. It appeared to be working in the first half as well. We really frustrated Mayo. They were being forced to shoot from distance and sort of take low percentage shots. Do you think it was the case in the first half that Mayo were sort of uncharacteristically poor, or did you think that our setup was working well?
Yeah, I think our setup was pretty good actually. It was a lot better than the Leinster final, as in we got a lot of numbers back. We marked the space a lot better, I thought, and got a lot of turnovers actually in the first half especially. I thought we defended really well as a group and as individuals as well. We crowded out Mayo a few times, turned them over and transitioned well up the field. So yeah, there wasn't much word on the team. There was lots of stories going around of who was starting, who wasn't starting, but there was, I don't know, was it 4 or 5 changes in the end, but yeah, no, I thought Kildare defended really well, especially in the first half, started the second half, and then it was a good display defensively, in fairness.
One of the changes made was in goals. We had Aaron O'Neill come in for Mark Donlan. What did you make of that change? I was actually saying to my friends on the way up that when we saw the team was announced, that I was happy with that change. And he made a brilliant stop in the first half. I think it was from McLaughlin from Mayo ran through. Yeah. He made a great save, and obviously there was a couple of 1 or 2 kickouts towards the end that sort of went over the sideline and stuff. But I thought from his league performances that he played in Newbridge earlier on in the year, I thought he was deserving of a start, and I just wonder what you thought about his performance in his season overall.
Yeah, I thought his season overall was pretty good. I've seen most of the league games. He was good. They were swapping him every game, so I thought he had a good league in the games that he played. I thought he was pretty good the other day as well. He made a couple of good saves. 1 or 2 kickouts went awry, all right, but that's going to happen in the game. Everything's moving so fast, and
yeah,
I don't know what, after the last game, conceding 5 goals, I don't know whether it was the keeper's fault or whose fault they were, but when you change the goalkeeper, it is, it could upset the full back line or upset the backs in ways. I know we've been doing it all year, but it was an interesting call. Obviously, there must have been a reason for it. So, yeah, it was an interesting call, but I thought he did okay in fairness overall in the league and in the championship game,
We were 3 points up at half time. We start the second half really well, 3 unanswered points. So we go 6 up. And in the modern game, 6 points is a very large gap, especially in the second half. Mayo had a mountain to climb. We had 14 men behind the ball at times. we conceded a couple of points, even when we were still 2 points up or 2 or 3 points up, when the momentum was with Mayo and the crowd was, you could hear every point they were scoring. The crowd really came out for them. But I thought even when we were still ahead, we got a bit sloppy. I thought maybe you should have tried to slow the game down a bit. We started taking some silly shots. We had no out ball up the field. I think at one stage we picked up the ball and we just got a loose ball, and Mick O'Grady was our first man up the field. Do you think we went too defensive, or we nearly, not to have the expression, shot the togs a bit when the momentum was going for Mayo? But how do you think we might have been able to manage the game out or differently from there?
Yeah, I thought for long periods of the game we were in control, especially in the first half. The start of the second half, we were, as I said, we were defending well, we were transitioning well up the field, and we had a couple of chances. I know some of them were highlighted again on the Sunday game last night. We had a couple of chances to keep the scoreboard ticking over. We were 3 or 4 points ahead. We could have went 4 or 5 points ahead. And when you're a team chasing, when you're 3 points behind, you always have that hope that you can get a goal or get a couple of points, quick points. But when you're 4, 5, 6 behind, it's nearly a mountain to climb. And I think we couldn't get the scoreboard ticking over at that stage, and we missed a few chances. And if we had to get them a couple of chances, I think we would have put 5 or 6 clear, and then the game was probably dead. But we always knew Mayo were going to keep coming back, and I think not that we went too defensive. I think near the end, I think we defended well, but I think we just ran out of legs a little bit, especially with the fast running in the first half and the transition up and down the field. It takes the legs away, So
we were slow enough to make substitutes as well. Mayo, when the comeback came from Mayo, they brought on Darren McHale when he came off the bench, kicked a couple of lovely scores, and I think we might have been a bit slow to ring in the changes. It wasn't until Mayo scored their first goal and then kicked a quick point after that we sort of started making a couple of changes. Do you think overall, looking back on the campaign, including the league and the championship, do you think it's a positive campaign?
Yeah, I was thinking about that today. I suppose it was a positive league, I think. I know we got relegated. We were very unlucky, I think, to get relegated. There was a couple of games could have went either way. We had some good performances in the league. Beating Dublin as well, and Newbridge was one of the highlights. But yeah, overall, I think in the league, especially, we loaded a lot of players, got a lot of experience into lads, and look, obviously we didn't want to get relegated. Wouldn't have been a goal for them, but we're going down now at the moment. So I suppose the goal for next year at the start is to get back into Division 1 as soon as possible. But moving into the championship, I thought we did okay. I think we the good games. Obviously, the Leinster final was a bit of a blow because I think everyone thinks that Dublin were coming back to the pack. They are a certain amount, I think, but they're not gone back as far as some people were saying. But it was unfortunate on the day. We got a couple of quick goals, and you can have all the game plans you want, but you're losing by 6 or 8 points in Croke Park against Dublin. The crowd are up, and the game plans are nearly out the window at that stage, But I think we recovered really well. I mean, it was a really important game on Sunday to come back, or on the weekend, to come back from the Dublin defeat. I thought we performed very well defensively, especially middle of the field. We're probably our 2 best players as well. Forward decent enough as well, in fairness, but we're just unlucky not to push it over the line. But overall, it's probably a bit of a mixed bag, but there are plenty of positives to take out of it too,
Yeah, me and Kev were speaking just briefly beforehand and sort of what we thought about the overall campaign, and sort of obviously the league campaign was, there's some brilliant performances, and the highlight obviously has to be the win against Dublin, and even avoiding defeat or getting the draw against Kerry was a brilliant start to that campaign as well. But just coming into the championship, it's just same story, new year, same story. Like we put in a couple of okay performances, but really when we had the big fixtures in Croke Park against Dublin, obviously we setup didn't, we didn't get off to a good start, and we were always playing catch up. And against the Dubs, it's always going to be hard to get back into that game. But yeah, you're right, losing by 10 or 12 points or even more than that in Croke Park isn't what we set out for. And then the Mayo game, you just really felt that they were there for the taking, and you don't even know what one is tougher to take. The one against Mayo where it's, they're there for the taking, and they probably weren't at their best, and you really felt at half time and even into the last quarter of the game, or before the last quarter, that we could actually win this. It's nearly tougher to take, even though you're proud of the lads as well and the performance they put in. But it's just one of those weird ones where you're very frustrated leaving, but you're also kind of, proud of the performance of the lads. Looking ahead to next year, then you were saying bounce back to Division 1 will be the first sort of first target of next year. It's going to be very hard with Dublin in Division 2 as well, and Derry will be there as well, obviously flying into the quarterfinals as well. Same again, I suppose, and try get back into Division 1 and try get a run against the Dubs in the Leinster final and see where that can take us.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially in the league, like it's very competitive down there in Division 2, and you get no real handy games. We've been there for a few years down there, and it's a difficult place to get out of because everyone's trying to get to Division 1, obviously. But as you say, there is a couple of good teams in it. But hopefully, we can get back up to Division 1 with the big boys and have a good Leinster campaign. Obviously, Dublin are always going to be there, so look, someone's going to have to topple Dublin someday. So hopefully, it does very soon.
Yeah, we've been saying that for 10 years now, is it, Kev? Since we were Mikey, since we were last. Since we've been saying that, but yeah, you're right. Hopefully, sometime soon. We'll skip over the sort of Kildare to go on to your sort of career with Kev there.
Yeah, so just to start the club stuff then, Mikey, I guess obviously you're a proud Nurney GA man. Can you tell us about your earliest memories of the club there and how you got involved with doing the right setup?
Yeah, I suppose it was probably 5 or 6, I'd say, when I started playing down at the club. I have a couple of older brothers and an older sister as well, and they all play with the club. And you know, I'm the youngest of them all, so when everyone else is going down, you've no choice but to go. And I suppose from being really young, I've always been down in around the club playing under 8s or under 10s. And back in them days, you could play under 10s when you're 4 or 5. Really, like there was no age. You could play whatever age you were, and probably playing all under 12, under 14s, all the way up to minor, under 21s and senior. But we joined with a Garvan, I think, in under 16, under 17, and we had a pretty competitive team, getting a couple of B finals. I think Lawrence has beat us in one and Ballymore beat us another one. But yeah, early memories, probably 5 or 6 down, kicking around the ball down in the pitch. Yeah.
And just to touch on that, you mentioned your siblings playing with Nurney as well. I was doing a bit of research, kind of just looking up a few bits on you to ask on this podcast. Like all I could see was the Conway name appearing over and over again. You know, closely linked with Nurney GA for decades now. Can you tell us about your family links to the club? Have you got any kind of standout relatives who play for Nurney over the years?
Yeah, well, I suppose all my uncles would have played. My dad would have played with the club, and my 2 uncles as well would have played. So they were always involved in the club, say in the 80s. And then I have 4 cousins from one family and another cousin from another first cousin as well. He's my uncle's son, obviously, and they're all still involved in the club. So, and my 2 brothers as well. So we've, at any time, there could have been 8 or 9 of us on the, between brothers and cousins. And we've always been involved with the senior team now and then all the way up. And my sister would have played. She played with Grange and Alvin actually out in just outside of Kildare. She played football with Kildare and played underage soccer with Ireland as well. So it's always been sort of in our house, Gaelic and soccer and all sort of sports. So yeah.
So there was no getting away from it. Fair enough.
No, that was the way it was.
Yeah. Just looking back then, I suppose, to some of the standout memories then of your time at Nurney. I guess from what I can see in my kind of brief bit of research, is that junior championship win in 06 early would have been the big one, and it was a 1-point win over Straffan on the day. Were you involved that day? Can you tell us about your memories of that famous win?
Yeah, I actually was injured the year before, and I was only coming back from a cruciate injury, so that was in 06. And we had a good enough run that time. We had a good minor under 21 team coming through, so we had a group, about 6 or 7 of us come onto the senior team at the one time down in Nurney, and we got to Straffan in Newbridge in the 06 final, and we actually got a good start. We were 1-4, 1-5, no score up after a few minutes, and Straffan got back into it just before half time with a goal, and then we were a point ahead, I suppose, for the last 5 or 6 minutes. It was fairly tight, and they had a high ball come into the square, broke to their full forward. He went 1-on-1 actually with my brother, and how he saved it, I don't know, but he pushed it around the post anyway, and they dropped the 45 short, and that's how we ended up winning by a point. So it was huge relief, but it was brilliant for the club. It was the first time we won a junior A since '84, I think. So to say the celebrations were fairly good now would be an understatement.
And did you kind of carry that momentum into the championship the following year? Like, was it just kind of something that I suppose even to this day, would people still look back at that as being one of the standout memories of the last 2 decades for Nurney?
Yeah, it probably was. Yeah, but we went intermediate then, and we got to I think in '07 we got to the quarter final, and then we've been in a couple of quarterfinals and semi-finals in the intermediate. But we're a small club enough, so our numbers are limited, and we're missing a couple of lads. We're competitive when we have everyone. We're missing a couple of lads. We're probably down at a bit of quality, but yeah, we're punching above our weight probably in intermediate still at the moment, and we're as competitive as most teams. It's very competitive division, the intermediate. In fairness, there's only one of probably 10 teams think they could win it every year, and so it's very competitive. So look, we're still in the mix anyway, and we'll still fight on as long as we can.
And just on that, I suppose, kind of looking ahead to the current campaign, the Division 3 campaign that Nurney are currently on. It's been a difficult league for you. Kind of what's the feel in the camp, and looking ahead to the championship beyond that, beyond the current league campaign. Is there anything that you're hoping to change or looking to change internally, or bring some new energy into the camp, or what's the plan there?
Well, to be honest, we've been missing a lot of players during the year. We have a couple of lads travelling, and we probably had 5 or 6 injuries there for a while. So we were missing the guts of 10 or 12 players from our championship team last year. So we've had a couple of games this year. Actually, we'd only 15 players. So we've been struggling for numbers big style at the moment. And we're slowly but surely getting a couple of lads back. And we'll probably have a couple more lads back now in the next week or so. So we're bottom of the league now. So we've 3 games left. I think if we don't win the 3, we could be on our way to Division 4, but Nurney are normally not too outstanding in the league. It's more the championship that we sort of tend to regroup for. I don't know why that is, but we tend to get lads back from being away and lads from injuries over the last couple of years, and we've been competitive in the intermediate division, so the league is what it is at the moment, but we're gradually getting players back, so hopefully now coming up for the championship we'll be able to push forward and being competitive.
Could I ask Mikey, like what is the plan, or what's the objective for the championship this year? Like, do you think you could mount the challenge and push for another famous title win for Nurney?
I'd like to think so. We have everyone back and everyone fit. I suppose we're as competitive as most teams. You know what I mean? There's probably a few teams that are a little bit ahead of the pack, but we're competitive, and we always, I don't know if teams really like playing us. Sometimes we probably have a reputation of being a bit hard to play against, let's say, and hopefully we get all our players back, and some of the lads that are away travelling back, we can be competitive into the meetings,
If we're going to kind of change course now and chat about your intercounty career, obviously I think it's fair to say that you really established yourself in the senior panel under Kieran McGeaney. How was it coming into that setup with such a kind of illustrious squad and such a famous manager who'd only won All-Ireland himself, a couple of years before that? How was it coming into that setup as a young player?
Yeah, it was brilliant. I was probably in the last year of Pádraig Nolan, which was 05, I think, and then 2 years for John Crofton, and then McGeaney came in then in 08. So we, I suppose, given what he'd done in the game himself, winning All-Ireland, and he was a serious player as he was. He came into the dressing room the first night, and we all bought into him, and he came with a different mindset. We were probably struggling at that stage with lads retiring, and it was sort of a transition of minors and under 21s coming through, and he probably came at a really good time, putting the whole thing together, and he was outstanding for us really when he came in, and the training was different to what we were doing. We were training hard, but I don't know whether we were doing the exact training we should have been. I know the game was moving on at the time, and as it still is moving on, and changes every couple of years, but he sort of just transformed the whole squad, and if you wanted to be there, you trained as hard as you could. If you didn't, you were shown the door, and that was just the way it was. And a lot of freshness and a new mentality to us really over the first couple of years, and landing into that. Then obviously you still have some of the serious players there, like Johnny and Rowley and Dermot and Bolton and Lepper and all them guys there as well, but experience as well. And he sort of came when we were in our mid to early 20s as well for a lot of us that came up to under 21 grade, so we were probably coming into a good age bracket. And yeah, we had a good run of 3 or 4 years there, in fairness, and we were probably unlucky not to win anything, but he definitely transformed the setup. Yeah.
And looking back to that era of Kildare football, it's been well documented on this podcast, and we've chatted to a number of your former teammates who would have been involved under McGeaney as well. Is there any kind of standout a game in particular that you really enjoyed as a player? You look back with very fond memories during that period.
Oh yeah, there was a number of games, I suppose. Probably in '09, we gave Laois a bit of a trimming down in Tullamore. That was a good day to get into the Leinster final against Dublin. We were probably unlucky to lose to Dublin actually in the Leinster final in '09. Yeah, there was a couple of enjoyable games. Like, yeah, there would have been, I suppose, the bigger games that we got later on near the end of the year, the Donegal, the Down game, and the Dublin game, as I said, in '09. They were probably the most disappointing ones, but we had some serious games to get there. You know what I mean? And the Antrim game in Newbridge at time with Dermot and Dermot's dad, and there's some really memorable games when you look back at them. And just unfortunately, we couldn't get over the line in some of the bigger ones.
I suppose, like as positive as all those memories are, for you, Mikey, like you also did suffer a couple of major injuries in the white jersey, kind of during that time frame as well, including 2 cruciate tears and sustained tendon damage. Can you tell us how you managed through those difficulties, at that time, and how you found the rehab and obviously then coming back into the squad?
Yeah, I was unfortunate. I had a good few knee operations. Actually, I think it was 9 or 10 knee operations. I had in all, as you say, 2 ACLs and cartilage operations, patella operations. But yeah, the first one probably was in 2005 when I was 19. That started it all off, and I got that sorted and got back going. But in 2009, then in the Wicklow match after the Leinster final, I think it was only a 6-day turnaround then, and the loser of the provincials went straight in for the following Saturday. We played the next game. I was carrying a cartilage injury in my left knee, and I snapped the cruciate on my right knee then in that game. So that wasn't as smooth as the first one. I got an operation done of that, and probably took me a year and a half to get over it between setbacks and different procedures trying to fix it. And I actually ended up going to Sweden for a week, to a professor over there, to get a fix. So yeah, it was a long road, I suppose, with rehab and little cartilage operations and going to rehab sessions before matches, and going on the bus with the lads and that. Then it was frustrating. And just for around 6 or 8 months, I probably wasn't getting any better, and all the rehab I was doing, and it was getting worse more than getting better. So that was quite frustrating. But yeah, it was difficult enough. But look, I mean, these are the things that you have to go through as a footballer, and I was more unfortunate than some. But look, that's the way it is. That's the way football goes.
And just even kind of touching on this period, like I think obviously the physical side of rehab is well documented, and it's quite tough to kind of get back to those top elite level performances that's demanded at the Intercounty game. But just to touch on, I suppose the mental side is it tough, seeing a lot of your teammates performing in Croke Park and pushing up against the top 3 counties in the country, or playing in finals or semi-finals, and knowing that if you were back to the best of your ability, you would be involved, or does that ever play into the mindset at all?
Yeah, it probably did. 2010 probably was the worst year. We got to the All-Ireland semi-final that year, and I missed the whole year. So I missed, actually, it happened in 2009, so I missed the Tyrone quarter-final that year, and then missed the whole next year, and it was probably the Donegal game in 2011 around that time when I came back. So it was a long year and a half, I suppose, and Kildare were going so well at the time. It was very frustrating because I was getting dates when I was going to be back, or if I get this operation or this procedure done, it's going to be 3 or 4 months, I'll be back running, and then that date would come and go, and you'd be getting another date then for another 2 or 3 months, and then that would come and go, and it was very frustrating, I suppose. We're just doing rehab, and the lads, you'd be in probably before some of the lads did their gym sessions doing rehab, and when they'd be gone, then I'd be still doing rehab. And before games, I'd go to the gym, maybe up in Strafford, and do some rehab, then get on the bus and go to the match with the lads. So it was frustrating, it was hard. But a lot of support around me, I suppose, at the time, with coaches and trainers, and in fairness, the lads were very good to me, and it was a difficult time, but I mean, sure, it is what it is. We just had to get it sorted, and we just stuck at it as long as we needed to.
Fair play, and you did eventually make that long-awaited comeback, and I think I can speak for a lot of Kildare fans. It was great to see you back in the Kildare jersey, when you did make that comeback. Just to touch on, I suppose, some positional changes, that you found yourself in, Mikey. Like, obviously in your early years with the Kildare footballers, I think you would have found yourself in a lot of kind of forward focused roles. I think wing forward, centre forwards, and kind of that half forward line. And then we saw you kind of vying for that centre back position, particularly maybe after the comeback, and maybe more defensive roles. Can I ask what the thinking was, or what was your own view on these positional changes for the Intercounty setup?
Yeah, I suppose it was always probably corner forward growing up in all the underage teams, and then when McGeeney and that came, I moved out to centre forward as sort of a playmaker. So yeah, we did okay there for a while. We were playing 2-2-2 was the tactics we were sort of playing, the formation. So it worked out well, and then we were trying to get a more kicking game then later on, probably in 9 around that time. So he moved me back to wing back then, because I was sort of playing with a sweeper at the time. So not many teams were playing with six backs straight. There was normally 7 backs, or some teams even had 8. So the point of it was me going back, wing back, to obviously get long kick passes in and attack as much as I could. And there was very little defending going on from my side of things now. And if you ask any of the other lads, they used to be always laughing at me. I used to be wearing number 7, but I've been wearing 27 now for all the defending I was doing. But it worked out well in ways, because I was given the license to go forward as well. And, you know, it's a different position, and it gives you it breathes new life into you as well as a footballer, I suppose, when you get a new position and a new job. And it worked out well for a couple of years. I really enjoyed it, wing back, because you were given the license, I suppose, to bomb forward and get a couple of scores and get on a couple of balls and knock them into the lads inside, you know. So I don't know what the real reason was why he was moved back. Probably wasn't scoring enough centre forward, but that could have been one of the reasons.
And did you enjoy? Obviously, you spoke about like you found it as kind of a refreshing thing in your career, and it gives you a new outlook on the game and that. But ultimately, you know, when you have a conversation with yourself and you're getting ready for a match, like, do you see yourself as more of a forward or a back?
Well, I suppose I had a defensive job as well. You know what I mean? You have to keep tabs on your man. If your man starts scoring, then you're going to be in trouble some way. So I obviously had a defensive role in ways, but when we had the ball, I was given the license to bomb forward and get the ball and drive it in as far as like long kick passes into the half forward line or full forward line. And you know, I think it did suit me, because a couple of knee injuries as well, you sort of lose a little step of pace. And I think when you're coming onto the ball, driving forward, it's better than receiving the ball with your back to it, having to turn and try and beat someone one-on-one, you know. So yeah, I think it did suit me actually, but I really enjoyed it when I moved back.
The last question from my side, and it's something that I try to ask, you know, most, if not all of our guests on the podcast, Mikey, is about some of the players you played with over the years. I mean, more often than not, people like to mention Johnny Doyle or Dermot Earley or James Kavanagh also got a couple of mentions as you know, their favourite players to play with in the Kildare jersey. Is there anyone in particular stands out to you as your favourite player to play with, and maybe even someone that's not as obvious as some of the names I just mentioned there?
Yeah, I suppose when you're asked that question, I suppose you go to the likes of Johnny and these lads and Early and Roy and them type of lads, which are obviously the mainstays in the team for years. But yeah, obviously they were brilliant to play with. James Kavanagh would have been a player over the years. I would have played schools football with him in Kilcullen actually for a couple of years before he went to Jarlath's, and we would have known each other probably since we were 12. So we would have had a good understanding. We played on the same line, sort of in the half forward line as well. So he was an excellent player, really powerful, really strong, good under a high ball, both feet, you know. Leper probably was a bit the same, very skillful, very tidy on the ball, very rarely gave it away, and kick off both feet as well. But when you look through that squad, you know, we had all-stars. You know, Kelly was an all-star, Mick Foley was an all-star, Morgan O'Flaherty was probably the best sweeper in the game for about 2 or 3 years. Owen O'Flaherty was an excellent footballer. So we had footballers all over the field, really, like, you know what I mean? We had some outstanding players, but I'd say probably off the beaten track of the main players, probably someone like James Kavanagh or Leper, yeah, were fantastic footballers.
Just looking outside of Kildare, Mikey, just before we wrap up, I just want to get your thoughts on the quarter-final draw and who maybe you'd like to see lift the Salmon Wire this year. I know obviously the draw was made this morning. We have Kerry, Mayo in the quarter-final, and the winners of that will play likely Dublin, who have Cork in the quarter-final. So that means there's going to be one of Clare, Derry, Armagh and Galway into the final. So just wondering, you obviously played under McGeeney before, but would you like to see Armagh get to the final under him?
Yeah, I would actually. Yeah, I would. They seem like they're probably the form side in the far side of the group. You know what I mean? Kerry and Dublin probably will be looking at coming through on their side. Mayo are never beaten, obviously, as we know from the last week, but I think Dublin will win their side. And yeah, Armagh were excellent yesterday against Donegal. So they're a real juggernaut of a team at the moment of serious momentum, and they're really going forward. I think Galway as well have been moving pretty well as well, so that's going to be a cracker of a game. I'd say that's the pick of all the games. And Derry Clare were probably seen as the weaker team in the group, so Derry have got them, but like Clare were excellent the other day and they come back against Roscommon, so it's very difficult to know. Derry have been playing unbelievable football this year. It's probably not unbelievable on the eye, but they're seriously well drilled. They're serious outfit, so I think they might beat Clare, and Armagh might beat meet Galway, and then Armagh could probably get to the All-Ireland final if they all going well. Yeah, but it's interesting. It's going to be interesting over the next couple of weeks to see.
It's a very interesting finish, all right. Yeah, it's a shame Kildare aren't involved. You just touched upon Clare's comeback against Roscommon. That was incredible, the last 5 minutes, and or not even the last 5 minutes. I think it was maybe the 68th minute or the 69th minute. They were 5 points down, and they obviously got the penalty. So that's what I was trying to tell the lads I was sitting with watching the Mayo game after that. It's not over yet, but unfortunately we didn't get that comeback. Listen, Mikey, thanks a million for joining us this week, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate that.
But it's Conway who started the attack. Now can he finish? The answer is yes. Mikey Conway from Nurney.
Mikey Conway, Nurney man, thanks a million to him for coming on. So that's the end of episode 9, Kev. It's the end of the league campaign. It's the end of the championship campaign. What's in store for Lilies Livin now?
We're gonna drag this out as long as we can. So I don't know if people are happy or sad to listen to that, but we've a couple more episodes lined up. We are going to try to get in touch with someone who was involved in the camp this year with senior footballers, be it a player or someone involved in the management setup, because I think it'd be great to get, an insight into their commentary of how they found the last couple of months. And, we might, without digging in too deep, we might try, pick out a couple of moments throughout the last 6 months, both the league and championship, and just get their take on things. And also, look ahead to next year. So looking forward to that. I think it's also only fair, Brian, this podcast has been very football focused, because that's obviously where our interest lies. But both the ladies footballers have had a great year, and the hurlers have had a serious year, and the white jersey as well. So we might look to get a few extra guests on.
Yeah, sounds good, right? Yeah, so I can't go on my summer holidays just yet.
You've been on your holidays for the whole thing.
Haven't missed an episode. Yeah, I suppose at least next year, at least we've got a good foundation. Like this year, it was sort of just thrown together in terms of maybe like 2 weeks before a championship, you came with the idea, and we decided to give it a go. So hopefully we'll definitely have the plans to, hopefully we do get another episode or two in this season, but next year we can give it a real go from pre-season even or for the start of the league campaign. We did get a couple of nice comments on last week's interview with Podge Fogarty, in case anyone listening to this hasn't heard that one, on Twitter. We had one comment saying, another brilliant interview, a real visceral insight into the highs and lows of the modern county player. This entire series has been such a fantastic insight into what it means to put on the white jersey and the sacrifices that have to be made. That was from the really unofficial Kildare GA 2022 fans page. And Rob McCabe at McCabe Physio on Twitter said, agree entirely. Great job by Lilies Livin Pod. A real opportunity to hear and get an insight from these former players. Rob was actually a physio of mine back when I was playing soccer and in secondary school. So he probably doesn't even know it's me, but yeah, I was with him on the Dublin Road. Thanks for that, Rob. And I think, Kev, that's two good comments that can sort of sum up the reason that we started this podcast as well, is because there's a huge, to be a big generation of Kildare GA supporters who would have had heroes playing for Kildare when they were supporting them and still are supporting them, who they never really would have had the opportunity to listen to or podcasts, and wasn't a huge thing and interviews like this when those players were playing. So I think those two comments really do sum up sort of the job we've been doing in terms of getting the stories and the insights into what it's like to play for Kildare.
No, I definitely agree with you, Rhino. I think that, like I said to you before we even start recording these podcasts, like if it was just myself, yourself, and this episode was great to chat to Mikey Conway, or if it was James Kavanagh or Lepper or whoever it was. I mean, we got to talk to so many iconic I suppose you can call them legends of Kildare football at this stage. Throughout this podcast series, which just from my own kind of selfish reasons was delighted to be involved in. And it's also great to hear that other Kildare fans out there have enjoyed it too. And just even from my side, like I have to give a massive shout out to the unofficial Kildare GA Twitter page. Sorry, I definitely butchered the username there, but you know who you are. He kind of works in the shadows, like he never looks for any center stage spotlight, but like puts unbelievable Trojan work in terms of like league fixtures and league results and underage results and hurling and camogie and football. Like honest to God, like Trojan stuff, and like we don't even really know who it is. So I don't know. It's like fucking Phantom of the Opera here or something. Like we haven't a clue who we're working with, but fair play to him. And it's something that like we've used his kind of resources throughout the podcast to get, the latest performances and from club teams and upcoming fixtures and that. So yeah, just want to give a quick shout out to him.
Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully, whenever we do find out, maybe we'll have a game of Cluedo over the off season. we can travel around. We'll get him the Lilies Livin mobile, and we'll travel around and see if we can get him out for a pint. So that's it for this episode, anyway. So just to confirm, we are definitely coming back next week. We're not sure what guests we'll have yet. Hopefully, someone who had a part in this panel, or it could be someone from one of the underage teams ourselves, or even the hurling or the ladies teams as well. That's what we're sort of looking at over the next couple of weeks. But there will be at least one, hopefully 2 or 3 more episodes before this season is out for the summer. Thanks for listening. As always, you can get in touch with us on our Twitter page at Lilies Livin Pod and also our Instagram page at Lilies Livin. We will catch you next week.